Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Valentine's Day 2023. And if you'd like additional weather information on top of what I provide in this broadcast, you can go to weather.gov. It'll bring you to a map of the continental U.S. with Alaska and Hawaii to the lower left. And if you point and click your cursor anywhere on this map, it'll pull up a forecast with any related watches, warnings, or advisories. And there's plenty of other information to find at the site. Looking at the map, though, this afternoon we have a couple of storm systems coming across the interior west and the Rockies. They'll be emerging out into the central and northern plains. Blizzard warnings in effect for portions of western Minnesota, the eastern Dakotas, another winter storm watch further south into southern Nebraska, Kansas. Winter storm warnings back across areas of Colorado and northern New Mexico back into Arizona. So an active weather pattern occurring down there in the lower 48 as well. And we have a powerful system impacting the western Aleutians. And it's going to send another front up through the Pribilov Islands. It'll create blizzard conditions. So a second blizzard warning in effect now through Wednesday morning there for the Pribilovs. And blowing snow and low wind chills will occur along the Arctic coast now into Thursday morning. Winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories are also in effect for tonight in through Wednesday morning for areas of the north and central panhandle, including the northeastern Gulf Coast around Yakutat. Overall, an active and a progressive weather pattern will continue across much of the state here as we head through the latter half of February. Well, looking up along the far Arctic coast, Dead Horse reporting some light snow and some light blowing snow, temperature at 18 below zero. St. Paul, under another blizzard warning, had a few breaks in the cloud cover early this afternoon. Temperature is 9 degrees because some colder air came in behind the latest system that passed through there the other day. But blizzard conditions will be redeveloping here this evening and overnight. Further off toward the east, Yakutat, just some light snow and fog right now, 30 degrees. They're under a winter storm warning and expecting 6 to 10 inches of snow tonight through Wednesday morning. And then Juneau also under a winter storm warning. The icy strait corridor from Gustavus eastward through Juneau could see as much as 5 to 11 inches of snow in some areas. Temperature there early this afternoon, a little above freezing at 34 degrees. So here are the advisories, warnings out right now. A winter weather advisory for blowing snow along the northwest Arctic coast, Wainwright, Utqiagvik all the way down toward Wainwright and Cape Lisburne. Further east, though, a winter storm warning because the winds are going to be a bit stronger and a little bit more in the way of some blowing snow. Bitter cold wind chills through Thursday morning. It could be as low as 65 below zero, along with blowing snow, reducing visibility. We have a strong high sitting up over the Arctic Ocean, and it's that easterly flow along the Arctic coast that will cause the blowing snow and bitter cold wind chills. In through the interior, a winter weather advisory in effect through early Wednesday morning due to some blowing snow along areas of the upper Koyukuk Valley and the Dalton Highway summits. And then further west, blizzard warning for St. Paul, St. George, now through Wednesday morning. 2 to 4 inches of snow, winds could gust as high as 50 to near 60 miles an hour. And then further west, winter storm warning through 9 p.m. this Tuesday evening for wind gust as high as 80 miles an hour and a period of moderate to heavy snow that's going to change over and go over to rain here at some point tonight. And that actually should include Shimia as well. So Adak through Shimia is under a winter storm warning through 9 p.m. this evening. And then finally, areas of the northern and central Gulf under winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories. We have winter storm warning that includes the northeastern Gulf Coast, Yakutat, down through Gustavus, eastward through Juneau. Anywhere from 5 to as much as 11 inches of snow could fall in this zone. Areas to the north, a winter weather advisory for Haines up through Whites Pass and Skagway for 4 to 7 inches of snow through about noon Wednesday. And then further south, we have winter weather advisory for 3 to 5 inches of snow from just north of Sitka, extending eastward through Hoona, Cake on over toward Petersburg. And there could be some wind gusts as high as 40 miles an hour on out toward Port Alexander. And as far as another notice, I just want a reminder, we'll have more information on this coming up, especially Thursday. New marine zones are going to be in effect for Alaska come March. And the reason for this, it's going to help improve the overall quality of the forecast to be more representative of certain areas along the coast. Here's the old marine zones. We have this coastal zone and then a broader offshore or open water zone. It's going to be broken out. These coastal zones will be broken out into nearshore marine zones that are 15 nautical miles away from the coast, and then the coastal zone will extend from that 15 nautical miles out upwards to 100 miles in some cases. And this will just allow for more zones and a better definition of the weather affecting the extensive coastline here in the state of Alaska. Satellite imagery has one system pulling moisture on up into the Gulf and a panhandle. Behind me, powerful low hurricane force wind gust pushing up toward Shimia. Gusts could be as high as 80 miles an hour through early tonight. And then a occluded front is going to work its way eastward. And the Pribilov Islands are going to see the blizzard conditions redevelop along that front later tonight. Here is a couple areas of low pressure. The front that's pushing up toward the panhandle, that's what's going to bring the snow. Behind it, the rain showers, mixed rain and snow showers during the day tomorrow. And then behind me is where this powerful front will be pushing across the Pribilov Islands into Wednesday, and that will bring, again, another round of blizzard conditions. And then as we go into the day on Thursday, we expect a weakening low up there up in the southeast portion of the state corner of southwest Yukon. But then another low is going to come out of the North Pacific, and that'll be pushing off to the north and east for the end of the week. That could actually spread some snow up Cook Inlet in through the Anchorage Bowl and the Matsu Valley. Meanwhile, strong gusty winds will continue Wednesday and Thursday along the Arctic coast, blowing snow and bitter cold wind chills. So low temperatures tonight, generally just below freezing across most of the panhandle except for the far south. Chilly in through the south central interior, teens to near zero, Glen Allen. Wednesday afternoon, with the front coming back through, precipitation is going to mix with and change to rain, especially on the outer Gulf Coast there in the panhandle. Temperatures bump upwards into the 20s up on the west side of the Kenai up toward Eagle River and Talkeetna, and then temperatures Thursday morning down near freezing along much of the panhandle, colder, a little colder in the north, and then daytime highs should be back up in the lower 40s, Sitka down toward Ketchikan, but temperatures holding generally in the 20s here. I think we'll see a little push of milder air trying to work its way up into south central come early in the weekend by Saturday. Temperatures still cold, 20s and 30s below along the north slope. Wednesday afternoon, temperatures have moderated by a few degrees back up around or just above zero across and south of the Yukon River. And then temperatures again, teens, 20s below there, maybe a few isolated 30-degree below readings Thursday morning, with temperatures getting back up to around or a bit above zero south of the Brooks Range. Still cold even on the north side of the Seward Peninsula. And then across the interior southwest, we're anticipating temperatures there to be below zero again, and even below freezing across the Alaska Peninsula, extending out into the Aleutians. But daytime highs should get back up into the lower 40s across the central eastern Aleutians, stay below zero as we get up through the Yukon and Kuskokwim River basins. Readings generally just below zero. A cold morning again Thursday, generally tens to teens below zero there. And readings on Thursday afternoon should get back up to near 40, creeping up the Alaska Peninsula as we get up on toward areas like Cold Bay, False Pass. Extended temperature outlook, we are looking for temperatures to average near or below normal February 20th through the 24th, with the greatest likelihood of below normal temperatures over the northern central panhandle. As we go into a little beyond that toward the last week of February, temperatures may moderate here across the northwest part of the state. We're going to see systems coming in off of the Bering, and that's why. That's also going to increase the odds, though, that precipitation should average above normal, creeping up the Yukon River across areas of the interior, as we tend to get some ridging develop over the Gulf, and that would tend to cut down on the precipitation amounts in southern areas along the Gulf Coast, but nevertheless, it looks like precipitation could average above normal through the interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's now time for your aviation weather, and let's just jump right into it. We have quite a bit of active weather going on. There'll be an area of low pressure up through the northern Gulf with a frontal system pushing in through the Panhandle, bringing winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories from the central up through the northern Panhandle, northeastern Gulf Coast. Heaviest snows will fall Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Areas along the icy strait corridor back up in through Yakutat, and then areas out in the west, we have another frontal band. There's a very strong low, in fact, very intense, down around 932 millibars as of this Tuesday early afternoon, and that low is going to gradually fill, but a strong frontal band will be sweeping across the Bering in through the central eastern Aleutians and bring another blizzard situation on up to the Pribilov Islands as we go into later Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday night, early Thursday. And then across areas of the far north, we have winds increasing along the Beaufort Sea coast there, along the Arctic coast. Winter storm warnings in effect up through that area, and winter weather advisories along the northwest coast for blowing snow and bitter cold wind chills. And then by Wednesday afternoon, we see the frontal system pushing further east on up through the eastern Aleutians and the tip of the Alaska Peninsula, and then moving onshore through the southwest and areas just south of Kodiak Island. We expect widespread IFR conditions. IFR conditions Thursday morning along the intercoastal mountains of the Panhandle, and then again along areas of the Arctic coast and even along areas of the west central interior, spreading in through the middle Yukon Valley, down along and south of the Alaska Range through the Talkeetna Mountains and into Prince William Sound. Pockets of IFR intercoastal mountains there in the inner channels, and then areas of the southwest Gulf all along through the eastern Aleutians and lower Bering Sea. Past conditions on Wednesday will generally be MVFR there along the south side of the Brooks Range, Anatuvik, as well as Adigan passes. Further south and west, we'll see IFR conditions to start Wednesday morning at Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, giving way to VFR conditions. Same thing, Rainy Pass IFR early Wednesday, giving way to VFR conditions. And then upwards along the central Alaska Range, MVFR at Windy Pass in the morning, giving way to VFR conditions. Same thing, Isabel Pass, MVFR to VFR. And then in the far east, Mentasta Pass should generally hold on to MVFR conditions during the day Wednesday. Further south and west, there will be a period of IFR conditions in the morning, giving way to MVFR conditions, but Portage should hold on to IFR conditions throughout the day with an area of low pressure south of there or southeast of there along the northern Gulf. And then, of course, across much of the Panhandle, IFR conditions with that wintry weather, accumulating snows, especially through the central and northern Panhandle. So IFR conditions will prevail there throughout the day on Wednesday in the far northern portion of the Panhandle. Looking at freezing levels, they will bump up a bit Wednesday morning along head of that front that'll be pushing on up into the Panhandle, 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 feet as we go further south there off of, well off of Vancouver Island. The surface freezing line runs along the northern Gulf Coast and then dips down below the Alaska Peninsula back out into the central Bering north of the Aleutians, but there is a bump up there of freezing levels aloft there through the central Aleutians associated with that occluded front that'll be working its way north and eastward. Greatest threat for icing Wednesday will be along areas of the northeastern Gulf Coast, Yakutat on in through the especially central areas of the Panhandle above 3,000 feet, above 5,000 feet toward Haida Gwaii, and then all along this strong occluded front from areas of the central Bering in through the eastern Aleutians to above 4,000 feet, generally the rule. Upper level jet stream winds, you can see the strong jet core, 155 knots west-southwest there, just south of the central Aleutians at 700 millibars. A broad wind field along and just south of the Aleutians and tip of the Alaska Peninsula into the North Pacific, and then 3,000 feet, a week's low circulation there in the northern Gulf. But again, here is the system out to the west. The powerful low will be filling to about 950 millibars as we go through the day on Wednesday with strong wind field. That will translate to widespread considerable moderate turbulence with areas of isolated severe turbulence around the Pribilof Islands down through the central and into the eastern Aleutians. Also, there could be a pocket of isolated severe turbulence, southern and western end of the Panhandle, surface to 6,000 feet, and then along the Beaufort Sea coast, along the Arctic coast there, surface to 3,000 foot moderate turbulence.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with the National Weather Service, and joining us today, two more people to talk about the augmented reality sandbox. It's Alana Valaji. She's a University of Alaska Fairbanks mechanical engineering student, helped design and work on the details to make this new type of sandbox there. Thanks for joining us, Alana.
Thanks.
And Courtney Breest, she's the outreach coordinator for EPSCoR, which is the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. It's a program funded nationally by the National Science Foundation, right?
Yes.
Okay. Alana, tell us about how you changed and adapted this version of the augmented reality sandbox. It's a really cool tool.
So Gina approached us with 3 goals for this new version of the sandbox. They wanted it to be compact in a light system that could travel around the state. They wanted it to be child-oriented, so we designed the sandbox to have 3 different levels.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. You can have younger children. You can have high school kids. I guess I should say high school teenagers.
Sure.
And then we also designed it to be more marketable, user-friendly, so that this could be seen eventually in classrooms all over the place, all over the state.
Okay. And you had a big hand in this, but this was a team approach, right?
Definitely. It was a really good experience for myself, for George Stevens, who we'll see later.
One of our hand models today. Yeah.
For 2 other members who aren't here today, Cody Klingman and Austin Hunt. And it was just a really good learning experience all around.
Very good. And this is something that is part of your learning experience as well, so you get to check a box in your education.
Yeah, it's a requirement for seniors of mechanical engineering at University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Very good, very good. Well, it is a wonderfully inquisitive tool, fun to play with, and I hope to get my hands in the sand here in just a little bit. But it's also part of a bigger program, something that we were talking about a moment ago, EPSCoR, and that's what Courtney is here to tell us more about. What is EPSCoR, and why do you need a sandbox?
Well, EPSCoR, as you mentioned, is a national program. We're funded nationally, but we're actually located statewide. We're at UAF, we're at UAA, we're in Southeast at UAS, and she mentioned, taking the sandbox as an educational tool, and that's where I'm an outreach coordinator for the South Central Test Case. Okay. Our focus is on the Kenai watershed, and we are really interested in using these tools like the sandbox to interact with the students down there and get them interested in STEM and also communicate the research findings that we've been having throughout the state. Okay.
And one of those, as George and Eric are kind of changing the contours for us there from UAF to maybe something that resembles a little bit of something more of the Kenai watershed, which is one of your focuses for the study, right? And specifically looking at some of the changes there and how that impacts people and also the salmon.
Yes, it is all of our research is social and environmental. Okay. So we have social scientists working hand in hand with our environmental scientists. One of the things we're studying is Upper Russian Lake, and we have a researcher taking sediment cores from that lake. So one of the things we're going to use the sandbox to communicate is how the landscape changed over a long period of time, thousands of years, going from glacier, covered by glacier ice, to being filled with water, and then
that's what they're doing right now.
Exactly. So
live.
They're moving the water around, and then I think they've got some props over there because we're also going to go a little bit more in depth and explain how the salmon got there. Okay. So using
there's
these
the salmon.
Exactly. Oh, I think there's a few more.
Yeah, we like more salmon in Alaska. More salmon.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really taking the findings from our research grant and just trying to connect with the community and translate it in a really hands-on and exciting way so people can interact with us as much as possible.
Well, sure. That makes the learning and the science real and quite literally in your face rather than just some boring black and white paper that you have to read about. This is something that people can understand better because it's visual and they're touching and feeling and seeing these changes, right?
Yeah, and get them engaged. And then outreach is a huge component, and working with the younger students, and actually even, working with the UAF graduate and engineering students it's a huge part of our grant, and we really enjoy it.
Oh, it is wonderfully exciting. And so, Alana, you were telling us that this is built to travel.
Right.
And this is built to do more things in version 1. Where can this type of project go in Alaska? And what can it demonstrate?
We were hoping to eventually get to villages that were harder to reach, that you couldn't necessarily move a whole fixed instrument to, right? You need something that can pack up, fit in your truck bed. One of the most attractive parts of this project is that this was going to be something that was used past our graduation point. This is going to be something that lives in the state for years. Right.
Well, it looks like you're well on your way with that. So give me another example. What else can this show us? We've talked about the Kenai River watershed. What's the coolest thing that you've played in the sand with? What's your idea?
Well, I definitely enjoy the props, but we also like kind of building up a giant mound, and if you put some water behind it, you can make a little runway, I guess, and demonstrate the effects of the hydrology by just putting up a dam and letting it all pour right down. And so that could, I think you mentioned it earlier, you could even demonstrate the effects of a tsunami.
Right.
Or something along those lines.
So it's not just topography, but it's also hydrology and coastal surge mapping and some of the coastal changes that we're seeing here in Alaska, and seeing what the smaller changes in the sandbox might do to kind of a real effect of a slosh or a push of water up on the coast. Tsunami inundation mapping, or even glacial dam release, as some has been demonstrated before. So wow, that's just an impressive thing. That it seems like the possibilities are nearly endless with this, and probably even more ideas that are popping up in your head too.
Yeah, as we speak.
Very cool. All right. Well, if folks want to get more information about AKwx, you guys are online. You're on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. AKwx, right? AKwx, Alaska AKwx, that is. And again, you guys are funded by the National Science Foundation.
Yes,
so more to come from that, and a longer-term study there. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. Congratulations on your hard work there. This is really fun. And for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and I'm going to go play in the sandbox there. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and let's take a look at your marine weather. First, the sea ice edge. Ice is extensive across the Arctic coast. We have a big high sitting up in the Arctic Ocean and along the Beaufort Sea coastline. We're going to see winds picking up out of the east, 30-35 knots, so it could cause some shifting of ice, but mainly blowing snow and bitter cold wind chills along areas of the Arctic coast. Further south, we are still seeing the progress. This ice could advance a little further southward here, at least into the day on Wednesday, as a couple of pretty strong occluded fronts have impacted the Pribilof Islands, and St. Paul at this time frame, this Tuesday evening and into early Wednesday morning, will experience another round of blizzard conditions. But in the Panhandle, we've had expect accumulating snow to work its way across the northern and central portions of the Panhandle tonight into Wednesday morning. Winds are going to be out of the southeast, 30-35 knots here, Petersburg down through Dixon Entrance, waves as high as 12 feet there. Outer Gulf Coast, southwest to south winds, generally 25 to 30 knots, waves running 12 to 14 feet. Winds could gust to 35 knots out of the north coming down Lynn Canal. Thursday, though, winds will fall off considerably. Southeast winds 10 to 15 knots for the inner channels. Waves running as high as 8 feet down toward Dixon Entrance and 2-3 feet up through the middle channel in Lynn Canal, and then back toward the west. Southwest winds, south-southwest winds around 15 knots, and waves generally running 10 to as high as maybe 13, 14 feet there for the outer Gulf Coast. Now for the northwestern Gulf, winds on Wednesday will be strongest coming out of the entrance of Cook Inlet, west-northwest, 30 to 35 knots with 10-foot waves, but variable winds Prince William Sound, as well as the upper end of Cook Inlet with waves only running a foot or two there. And then across the region, winds will relax Thursday with generally variable winds around 10 knots in Prince William or in Cook Inlet with waves of 1 to 2 feet, and southeast winds to 10 knots with 2-foot waves there in Prince William Sound, and then generally south-southwest winds off the Kenai at 15 knots. Across the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, winds on Wednesday will generally be out of the west-northwest, 25 to 30 knots, waves running 13 to 16 feet on the North Pacific side and around 6 feet in the ice-free areas of Bristol Bay down toward north of Cold Bay. And then on Thursday, winds will be variable, Shelikof Strait 10 knots, but look for winds to turn back toward the south-southwest and pick up to 30 knots once you get from around Chiknik off toward the south and through the open waters, and then also north of Cold Bay. Waves could be as high as 20 feet south of Sand Point, 15 feet north of Cold Bay. Powerful winds have really churned up the seas out west of Adak in Kiska on up to Shimia. Could see waves as high as 30, 40 feet on Wednesday. Winds out of the south-southwest, 35 to 45 knot gales. For the eastern Aleutians, winds will be out of the southeast to south, 35 to 40 knot gales. Waves 12 to as high as 20 feet there south of Atka. And then on Thursday, winds across much of the region are going to be out of the southwest at 35 to 40 knots, with waves running 25 to 30 feet on the North Pacific side and generally between 19 and say 25 feet on the Bering side. Across the areas of the southeast Bering, winds will be out of the east, 40 knot easterly winds ahead of that front there as St. Paul, St. George. But off to the north, winds fall off with northwest to north winds 10 to 15 knots over the ice, shifting easterly to 25 knots St. Matthew. And then on Thursday, we'll have a south wind at St. Paul, St. George to 35 knots, but a northeast wind to 40 knots in the vicinity of St. Matthew. And winds will generally be out in the northeast there out of Norton Sound and south of St. Lawrence at 20 knots. Along the Arctic coast, brisk winds 30, 35 knots, causing that blowing snow and bitter cold wind chills with the ice in place. Those winds fall off 15 to 20 knots through the Bering Strait and lower Chukchi Sea. And on Thursday, winds continue, especially from Prudhoe Bay through Kaktovik, 30 to 35 knots from the east. But then as they get through the lower Chukchi Sea, kind of a mixed bag of winds of 10 to 15 knots, becoming northeasterly there through the Bering Strait on the north side of St. Lawrence with ice in place. So here is that powerful low. By early on Wednesday morning, we'll be pushing that front out in through the central and eastern Aleutians with the low here out over the northern Gulf.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.